two men who once worked for former Mayor Ed Koch, whose current interests and passions, though totally different, somehow trace back to those early days in politics. The Point starts right now. Sam Schwartz served as traffic commissioner under former Mayor Ed Koch and has studied traffic congestion for, I got to say this, over 40 years. You might say he's the grandfather of congestion pricing, and I think it's probably true, but I want to ask you this question. You have been a proponent of congestion pricing since I was 12, I think, but whatever. But many people think it's just a money grab and that it's not going to solve congestion. I wonder what you think about it and what your answer to the critics is.
You know, for the most part, congestion pricing, when it was tried elsewhere, reduced traffic about 15 to 20%. And that is what the MTA is estimating. Yes, it is a money grab in the sense that it has to raise $1 billion a year net for the MTA to issue bonds of $15 billion. That was set in the legislation. The legislation doesn't say you have to reduce congestion a certain amount. So I'm not surprised people are making that claim. But we will see a reduction in traffic as well.
But some people would argue that New York streets are different than other places like London and Singapore that have tried congestion pricing because we have this new influx of delivery trucks, people getting, you know, Amazon deliveries and food deliveries and things like that. Plus, you know, we have bike lanes now, and we have outdoor dining sheds that are taking up space, all kinds of things that are claiming space on the streets, and people think it's not going to change congestion because you've got all these other things that are vying for space and it's going to be just as bad. What do you say to them?
You know, that's the reason we need congestion pricing. Traffic volumes are up to pre-pandemic levels. Truck volumes, as you point out, are a good 10 to 15% above pre-pandemic levels. And therefore, we have a lot of congestion. If we could reduce the congestion, truckers can get through more quickly, taxis can get through more quickly, and we could have a better functioning city.
But here's the question. What's the likelihood that the fact that there's lower fees for trucks and everybody else to come in at night after, say, 9 o'clock, what's the likelihood that some of these companies will say, okay, do night deliveries because it'll be so much cheaper in terms of congestion fees?
Well, I think that's one of the goals of the program is to have truckers. But is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? What I had proposed to the MTA, there's a lot of things that I'd like to see changed in the plan. But,
like what?
Well, one thing is for a trucker that gets out by 6 a.m., because they're measuring people not only coming in, but coming out. If they're gone by 6 a.m., lower the fee to next to nothing. We've been trying truck deliveries at night for more than 50 years, and we haven't succeeded in it. There is a way to do that. So there are a number of strategies that could be used. We have to get it in and then improve it.
But see, there's all kinds of deliveries. You know, there are stores that get deliveries of goods that are going to be for sale. And then there are people who want their FedEx deliveries and their UPS deliveries and their Amazon deliveries. So does it make sense for all of those people to do their deliveries at night?
No, that one of the problems with deliveries at night is many mom-and-pop stores are only open during the day, and we were never able to get them to agree to nighttime deliveries. So it's not perfect for nighttime deliveries, but there are a lot of places where they do have staff available at night, and those deliveries could happen. Part of the problem, Marcia, is we've gotten lazy. We think, as New Yorkers, we all have room service 24 hours a day, and we could just call, and we go on these apps, and they will deliver for 5 miles. You can get Peter Luger's in Midtown Manhattan now. That's crazy. We should have a fee based on distance for truckers, for bike riders, for delivery people.
So you're saying that delivery people who are coming into the Central Business District should also be paying some kind of a fee based on distance?
I'm saying the public should pay. When I go on an app and I see that that delivery place is 5 miles away from me, I should have to pay for those 5 miles.
I feel that people are going to be writing into the show and screaming at you even before you leave the studio. But let me talk about something else. Residential parking permits. You have a situation where people are concerned that people are going to park above the congestion zone of 60th Street and find parking and take away parking from the people who actually live there. How do you feel about issuing residential parking permits so that people can actually find parking in their own neighborhoods?
In the 1980s, when I was traffic commissioner, it became a racial issue. White neighborhoods did not want black people driving and parking their cars in their neighborhood. So I was against residential parking permits. This image that people will fight the traffic all the way down to 61st Street.
But they don't have to. They could be in Washington Heights. They could be around 96th Street, wherever there's a subway, 125th Street, 96th Street, 72nd Street. They could park all around those areas, and not on the and in Queens and in Brooklyn too, on the other sides of the bridges. So why wouldn't we do that?
Many people do that. That's called park and ride. And park and ride doesn't occur right at the very edge.
So should we have residential parking to protect the people who actually live there?
You know why I want residential parking?
Why?
Because people have phony plates. I went online and I got a Vietnam vet plate from the state of Mississippi for less than $20. It's good for all of 2024. I'm not going to use it, of course, but I just wanted to test the system. You walk Midtown streets, you walk any streets in New York, and you will find cars registered to faraway states. You'll find paper plates. You'll find even cars without plates.
The other thing is people are concerned about price gouging of garages that are going to be located above 60th Street so that people could park there and then get into the zone. Do you think that the city should do something to make sure there's no price gouging?
There's price gouging of garages in the heart of Midtown today. Garage owners practice congestion pricing, and they do surge pricing. And guess what, Marcia? In 1980, when I tried to do a form of congestion pricing, I was sued by the garage operators, even though they practice it.
So another contentious issue, which is going to go to court next month, has to do with whether city employees who work in the congestion zone should get an exemption. Where do you come down on that?
Absolutely not.
Why?
I was a city worker for 20 years. Why should the city worker get an exemption, but the person that works in the pharmacy, the person that works in the clothing store, the person that works in a bodega doesn't get an exemption? Why a city worker?
But wait a second. You're talking about all of these people who feel that they're going to be robbed in the pocketbook by having to pay this big congestion fee. So, is there going to be pressure on all kinds of employers, not just city employees, but the private employers, to try to reimburse their workers for the cost of driving to their businesses that happen to be in the congestion zone?
First of all, when you look at low-income New Yorkers, there's about a 50-to-1 ratio in terms of low-income, working, poor who benefit from this. That's from the Community Service Society that represents low-income New Yorkers. When we talk about city workers, we're talking about middle class. I was a city worker for 20 years. And if you drive in and you have free parking as well, that parking should be taxable. So I don't see any excuse for a city worker not to take public transportation. Recently I counted how many different transit options do people have to come to the CBD. It's over 200. 53 rail options.
Yeah, but there's all kinds of
bus.
transit deserts too. You know that.
Yeah, and some people will drive, and 85% of the people in every city that had congestion pricing continued to drive. And in fact, they preferred it because there were fewer people on the road. That difference of 15% could make a big difference in terms of the speed of traffic and the frustration that we all experience, especially when we hear sirens and emergency vehicles that can't move in traffic.
So look into your crystal ball in 30 seconds or less. Tell me what the streets of New York City are going to look like a year from now if congestion pricing goes into effect in June.
We're not going to see any speed traps set up. We're not going to move that fast. It'll be like turning back the clocks to pre-Uber, pre-Lyft days. Traffic will move much better at speeds of 7 miles an hour in Midtown. They're at 5 miles an hour in Midtown now. 9 miles an hour in the Central Business District. They're at 7 miles an hour. It's better, but we'll still be a pretty busy city.
And on that note, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Bruce Ratner served as Consumer Affairs Commissioner under former Mayor Ed Koch and then became a real estate developer, but his current passion, changing the way the medical profession deals with cancer, may be an outgrowth of his work going after corrupt merchants and repairmen. He's written a book, Early Detection, Catching Cancer When It's Curable. So here's the deal. When you were Consumer Affairs Commissioner, you had an intense focus on going after the bad guys, the merchants, the alarm salesmen, all kinds of bad guys. Right. Now you've got the same laser focus on the medical profession. You want to change the way they deal with cancer. Why?
I guess I just have always been an advocate. I've always been on the progressive side for all my life, and did a lot of science work, but the real issue is it gets me upset and angry at the fact that we can do something about curing cancer and making people not as sick and saving families if we catch cancer early. And I care a lot about that, just as I cared about people being ripped off. We did hair dyes when I was Consumer Affairs Commissioner and their contribution to cancer. So I care a lot about this subject. And one reason is I had a brother who died 8 years ago who I was very close with, but the truth of it is every one of us has had to deal with cancer, whether it be a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, or maybe even awful, a child, an uncle. So this is around us all the time, and I guess I'm angry a little bit, more than a little bit. I'm angry that there's a way in which we can actually change a lot of things, both disparities. We can make sure that people get screened, that they don't get bad cancers, or that they get caught early and they save their lives, and yet that's not where we spend our money as a country or in any kind of way. We don't spend it on early detection of cancer. And it's easy and it's there. This is an optimistic book. It says we can do it and we can do it. And so my life's going to be about an initiative.
You know, but as I read your book, I was moved by the loss that you suffered. Not only your brother, your grandmother, your sister-in-law, your mother, they all had various kinds of cancer. And as you tell their stories, they all the cancers were all caught in the late stages.
That's correct.
And so I wonder what effect that had on your desire to change that and to try to get the medical profession to change and focus on early detection.
Well, what happened was when I saw my brother got sick, I've been on the Sloan Kettering board for a couple decades, and I always thought that cancer was curable no matter what stage it was in. Then my brother gets metastatic cancer, actually too late, and I thought there'd be drugs that could do something, and then I realized that that's not the case. If you don't catch it early, you're not likely to live if you catch it in stage 4. And so that really got me started. That was 8 years ago. And I focused on it and I said, something's really wrong. And that's really what did it.
But yet you seem to say in the book that the medical profession spends its money, its research dollars on treating late-stage cancers. And most cancers, because there are no early detection tests, it's stage 4.
Right, correct.
Which gives you few options.
Very few options.
So how do you get the medical profession to go from this way to going this way?
So the book. I want to sell as many books as possible, of course, to get the word out. But the real purpose of it is to be a platform. I really want to spend time on creating initiatives, which I've done already, to try and get a model that really works to screen for some of these cancers. For lung cancer, which is the low-hanging fruit, 25% of all cancer deaths are lung cancer. They're found primarily in stage 4. You have a 10% chance of dying. So it's a test that works, but only 5% of the people who should be taking that test take that test.
How come?
There's a number of reasons. First of all, we have a medical profession, which I was called, there are naysayers all over the place. And so when you come up with a new test, it takes a long time for the doctors to accept it. The pap smear took 50 years to be accepted and actually used regularly. So the problem is, one, you have people who don't believe in lung cancer screening. Second,
are you saying doctors don't believe in lung cancer screening?
They say too many false positives, which is just not the case. They don't really know. There is an answer. There are not that many false positives, but they don't know that. So there's no, mass media is the key way to get to people on screening, for anti-smoking, for vaccines. There's no mass media spent by our government on lung cancer screening.
But, you know, one of the things you talk about in your book is that money should be spent on developing easy tests, like blood tests, that would help people to be screened. Is that reality? I mean, can you develop blood tests for the myriad of cancers that exist in the world, or is there some that they should focus on?
So thank you for that question. That's a very important question. The answer is yes. For the first time, there's money going into early detection. It's private capital for this blood test. It's a company called Grail, and it makes a test which is still in the process of being perfected, but is being used, which will detect up to 50 cancers. And it's called Grail. The test is called Gallery. It's available. Unfortunately, it's not covered yet. It's going to be a few more years, but that is the future. That's why I say it's an optimistic book. If we can do that, that will change everything. Imagine getting a blood test, seeing if you have cancer, and then treating it early.
But the question is that a test for rich people?
That's the right question. The answer is, right now, yes. But the book is heavily about disparities, as you know.
I know that.
And so what has to happen is there are bills in Congress right now to cover that test. That's got to happen. There has to be some more testing done before it's perfected. But it will eventually get covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial insurance. And that probably 4 or 5 years off. But it has to be covered, because the other thing, we don't want to create more disparities. And if we don't get it covered by Medicare, Medicaid, then we haven't really done our job.
But how are you going to get the government to do that? Right now, you have Republicans in Congress that want to cut back on Medicaid and Medicare. So how are you going to do that when there's no appetite for even funding it now in Washington?
Here's the amazing thing. The bill I just described, included in Medicare and Medicaid, which will take a while to pass, is supported by Republicans and Democrats. Why? Cancer hits Republicans and Democrats. It hits all of us. And so the congressmen, senators care a lot about cancer, and if this test proves out to what we think it is, I think it will get passed. It's a different subject. It's not something like, do we give aid here or do we give aid here? And where does the money come from? The answer is Medicare, Medicaid do get funded by the government. The test would not be a major part of the health care cost. And I think you will absolutely, the Congress people, I could make a list of the number of congressmen and senators who are interested in cancer. It's gigantic because everyone's been affected.
But another thing that you touch on in the book, which hits a chord, is the fact that there's a disparity in services, and that people in low-income or minority communities either don't have access to these tests and services, or haven't had the education to realize that they should get these tests.
Thank you for asking that. Here's a fact. Women who are white, Caucasian, get the same incidence of cancer as black women do. But the mortality rate is 40% higher for African American women. 50% of low-income individuals who get diagnosed with cancer in Washington, D.C. don't follow up. So what do we do about that? There's a whole chapter on what's called patient navigators. It's a Band-Aid. There are social disparities that we can't do a lot about quickly, but patient navigators guide someone through the system. They make sure to call before a test is going so that people show up. They help them find the doctors. They explain everything to them. And we need to increase the number of patient navigators. There was just a change. Now Medicare and Medicaid cover patient navigators. That is the Band-Aid that fixes that disparity.
We're going to run out of time, but I want to say that your book is available on June 11th on bookstores around the country.
Correct. Yeah.
And we're going to have to leave it there for now, but we'll be right back.
I thank you very, very much.
Thank you for joining me. I have a confession. I have a self-driving car, but I've never actually activated it on the streets of New York. Would other New Yorkers sit in a car that was driving itself? They're weighing in on your point. Would you be a passenger in a self-driving car?
No. No.
Oh, I don't know.
With no one else in it?
Yeah.
Probably not. That just sounds creepy.
It's creepy?
To me, yeah.
Not right now, no.
Why?
I just don't think it's really safe at this point.
Negative. I don't trust technology.
Why?
I watch one too many Terminators. I don't trtrust no, I don't trust
I gotta
technology.
find somebody who's willing to do it.
I do not trust technology like that. Nope.
I'm afraid of it being hacked and being taken over.
I have a distrust for technology, I think.
You, a young person, distrust for technology?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, sometimes, yes.
Should self-driving technology be tested on the streets of New York City?
it should be tested on Manhattan, I think, at like 86 to 59.
I don't think so. They're not ready yet.
Why?
About another 10 years from now.
Should self-driving technology be tested on the streets of New York City?
Absolutely not.
No.
Why not?
Jaywalking, e-bikes, too many cars right now. It's a terrible combination.
Too many variables.
I don't think that the citizens of the city deserve to become guinea pigs for an experiment that may or may not work out.
I think it should probably be tested in more residential places first, and then maybe they can move it in here because there's so many like hazards.
So the mayor wanting to do it is not a good idea?
Negative, no.
I think it's very obvious what would happen.
I feel like somebody would get hurt. Somebody would get injured.
I think we would have a lot of accidents.
We'd have deaths. We have cars going into shops, going into stores.
Some people would be hit, probably. That's not funny. I shouldn't laugh.
New York is a busy city, and it's dangerous itself. It just doesn't seem right.
Will technology solve the city's problems?
In time. And AI is not the answer.
Absolutely not.
Depends on what the problem is.
I think technology is a way to solving problems, but you need to be careful with how you use it.
People will help solve New York's problems.
I think that we should have humans probably work on them first.
So you think technology will solve the city's problems?
There are aspects of technology that not only would, but are solving problems. I don't think that's one of them. Furthermore, I don't see any elegance to this. Why would you want to get in a car and not drive it? The whole fun of a car is driving it.